everybody. Welcome to another episode of Cutter One. I am your host, Jay Just Jay, your resident maker of trouble, your resident culture warrior. All right, I was looking over some news stuff, and this article caught my eye. And initially, I thought it was an article I had previously seen in regards to season two of The Rings of Power, but actually, this seems to be like it's a follow up to that previous article that a lot of channels covered. So let's take a look at it here. This one is coming to us from Screen Rant, and it says how Rings of Power Season 2 will be impacted by fan response to Season 1. The Rings of Power showrunners J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay have stated that they're listening to fan feedback, but it won't change Season two's plans. The Lord of the Rings of Power showrunners J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay have revealed how The Rings of Power Season 2 will be impacted by fan feedback of Season 1. The Rings of Power Season 1 has garnered a sizable number of viewers who have enjoyed the show's version of the Second Age of J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth. People who are enthralled by the show have discussed everything from fan theories about the stranger's identity to their own shaken responses at the reveal that Halbrand is Sauron. The series has also done well critically, with season 1 holding an 85% on Rotten Tomatoes at the time of writing. Okay, so clearly this is a fluff piece. This is sort of like, they're trying to stamp out any embers of criticisms that they feel are still out there. And I'll show you how this ties in late. There's another article that I'll do a separate video on. And you can sort of see how it's interesting how they're both timed together. But anyway, so clearly this is a fluff piece because they're mentioning the 85%, critic rating that it got on Rotten Tomatoes and completely ignoring the 39% it got from the audience reviews of it. And I don't know who these legion of fans are that love it and are so enthralled by finding out the stranger's identity. Anyway, let's keep going. However, decisions made throughout Rings of Power's production and during Season 1 have resulted in some negative responses to the series. While some criticism came in the form of racist backlash against casting black actors as elves and Harfoots, hardcore Tolkien fans were also upset at character design inaccuracies, such as portraying female dwarves like Durin's wife Disa without beards. Structural decisions for the series were also called into question by fans, with the Rings of Power showrunners responding to pacing critiques that claimed the show's first season was too slow. While the show has a sizable number of people that enjoy it, I don't know where, there are still viewers who feel as if there are areas the series could improve upon. You think? In an interview with Vanity Fair, Payne and McKay addressed how fans' responses to The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power Season 1 would impact Season 2. The showrunners revealed Season 2 was already planned out before Season 1 aired, and that while they are listening to responses to the show, it won't have a major impact on how Season 2 plays out. Check out Payne and McKay's full statements below. First, I want to go back to this. See, this is a subtle tactic. I I got my degree in communication years ago, in the '90s, and part of my degree was in television and radio production, and we were we had a class and we were shown how to manipulate images and situations to make them appear differently on the news. The classic example would be if you have say you have protesters outside of a building and you got like 12 of them, okay, and they're walking in a circle in front of the door. Don't film it standing up normal shoulder height with the camera and stuff like that. Put the camera on the ground close to them, and what you would get is you get feet walking one way while behind it you have feet walking the other way. It makes it seem like there's a lot more people, especially if you're doing quick cuts during the story. Anyway, the reason why I mention that is because in addition to being a fluff piece, you could already see that they're just assuming and that the backlash against quote unquote black actors as elves and Harfoots it was just racist based. Okay, and they literally just said while some criticisms came in the form of racist backlash against casting black actors as elves and Harfoots. Now, I obviously did not see every criticism of the show, but I am one of those people that, you know, did have a problem with that because Tolkien is very specific in how he describes the elves, and he uses the word fair a lot. And what he means by, you know, their looks being fair is, oh, like you would say fair skinned. Okay. Um, in addition to that ethereal quality. Now, my criticisms and most of the fans' criticisms of their casting isn't the fact that the person is black, okay? And it isn't the fact that nobody wanted people of color in a Tolkien setting, okay? It's you're doing it specifically for you. The audience knows why you're casting black actors as elves and Harfoots, okay? It has nothing to do with story, okay, and everything to do with agenda at Amazon, because you Amazon has even come out and said their shows have to meet certain requirements in terms of representation and diversity, otherwise they just don't get green lit. So we know that the reason why they're there isn't to enhance the story. It's not because you're trying to have representation. Okay, you're doing it to check off boxes, and people know that. The fact that people point it out, and I said this in another video, the fact that I point this out, the fact that I point out that Tolkien does describe his elves as being fair, i.e., light skinned, okay? The fact that in context, in that Tolkien was creating a mythology for Britain, okay? Um, and coupled with the fact that a lot of it was based on neighboring mythologies. In other words, he borrowed some from Greek mythology, from Roman mythology, from Nordic mythology, from Celtic mythology, stories that the Picts told, and he pulled certain pieces, and you can see that. For instance, the dwarven runes are literally Nordic runes. They're referred to. The name of them is called the Futhark. Okay, look it up, Google it. The dwarven runes in Middle Earth are Nordic runes, and that's because he was trying to build this mythology for England. Now, in order to do that, because of the history of our planet and the way peoples have migrated and stuff like that, the history going back to the time that Middle Earth is supposedly, from, um, the British Isles would be largely white. And I'm not talking Anglo-Saxon. I'm talking like Picts. It's Picts, Picts and stuff like that. The people that ran around pretty much naked with blue paint on them. Okay. Um, so when somebody points out that in context, Tolkien trying to create this British mythology, in context of he describes the elves as being fair skinned, in context that he describes the Harfoots as being browner of skin, not brown skin, browner compared to the other two proto hobbits, or the other two types of hobbits. Um, and he was trying to say that there was the ones that had skin that you might see somebody who's your classical Irish ginger, freckles, very, very pale complexion. And then you'd have somebody who'd have a more Italian, Mediterranean, olive complexion and stuff. That's what Tolkien was implying when he said they were browner. Because if he wanted them to have brown skin, he would have said brown skin. The man was a master at language. He knows what he's doing. Nothing he ever wrote was throwaway. Okay, so with the fact that he says browner of skin, he means browner. He means darker. I myself am part Spaniard. Okay, my wife is Irish. Okay, I am browner than she is. I don't think anybody's going to say I'm black. I'm pretty sure of it. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I'm pretty sure nobody's going to say, oh, well, he's browner than her, therefore he's black. No, that's not how it works, and we all know that. So, this whole idea that it was racism at the core of people pointing these things out, I think is disingenuous at best, and it's insulting and slanderous at worst, because it's not. Personally, I think they had a wasted opportunity as a Tolkien fan, as somebody who's really into Tolkien and loves the lore. I would have loved if they, instead of doing what they're doing and just trying to milk it for every dollar they could, where we got to have hobbits, even though they weren't around. We got to have a wizard, even though they weren't around. We got to give the elves the rings first, even though they didn't get them. We got to have a black elf and a southern uh, white woman, okay, have a relationship. And that's another thing that most people have missed. Elves and humans coming together like that, like Arendelle and Bronwyn. Okay, that's huge in Tolkien's lore. That's huge, and you guys who are into Tolkien's lore know this. That's only happened three times before. The most famous being Beren and Luthien. Okay, but Beren and Luthien, Arwen and Aragorn. That's not an everyday thing. So the fact that they felt that they could just make it happen, to score brownie points with like, look, we've got our interracial couple, is another thing that's a slap in the face. But the point being, this article just assumes, and it starts with the premise that if you criticized any of this, that you're somehow doing it from a place of hatred and racism and not wanting to see people of color. Like I was starting to say, I feel they missed an opportunity. I would have loved to, if one of these seasons focused on the blue wizards in the east and in the south with the Easterlings and the Haradrim. I think that would have been awesome. It gives you the flexibility to create a wholly new story, because Tolkien didn't go into a lot of detail. Okay. And those areas are more ethnically diverse, with large populations of people, with people of brown skin, black and brown, people of color. Okay. Different ethnicities. Heck, you could have had entire cities made up of nothing but people who looked, you know, Arabic or North African or whatever. Um, and I would have loved it. I would have loved to have seen a show. You could have your main characters be, you know, black and brown and be the stars of the show. And as a Tolkien fan, it wouldn't have elicited a peep, because my criticisms aren't coming because I don't want to see people of color in Middle Earth. My criticisms are coming because I know damn well why you're doing it. You're doing it because you think that people watching this show either don't care or are too stupid to realize you're only doing that to check off a box. You really don't care. But anyway, I got off track here. But so just be aware of how the little subtle remarks that you get sometimes when you see these articles, that there's no potentially or alleged racist backlash. It just is racist because it had to do with race and they didn't like what you said. So anyway, okay, so we get to their comments. Payne says, in terms of how it's impacted season two, we wrote most of the season two before season one came out. We're refining the last bits of it now as we're starting to shoot, but really, the cake was kind of baked before the audience response came in. Certainly, you look at audience response and you see what characters people love and what kinds of storytelling move them. I wouldn't say we're overcorrecting for any of it, but we're certainly listening to people's responses. McKay says, we're in this for the long game. The show is a life project for us. We are married to it, and the bar couldn't possibly be higher for what we want to achieve. Our blood, sweat, and tears are going into this every waking moment of our lives. We want this thing to be delightful and emotional and exciting and thrilling and surprising and heartbreaking and romantic and all the things you want from Lord of the Rings. I'm assuming he means the movies. So I think in some ways the audience response, we're a year ahead of that because we saw it a year ago. If that was the case, then why all the backlash? And we were like, here it's really seeming to work, and here it's maybe not working as well as we might have hoped or thought it would. So to the extent there's a course correction, it's just us building on the strengths of the show and on the strengths of our actors and our designers. Rings of Power Season 2 won't address all fan complaints, and that's a good thing. I told you this was a fluff piece. This isn't the first time Payne and McKay have responded to the idea of fan criticism shaping the Rings of Power season 2. In October, the showrunners said Rings of Power would not be impacted by fan feedback. While Payne's latest statement hints that some fan feedback is now being considered, McKay points out that a lot of changes to season 2 will still be originating from what the showrunners learned during production of season 1. It's currently unknown how the Rings of Power season 2 will differ from season 1, but it's possible audience complaints like pacing and lore accuracy could be addressed. However, it's clear from Payne and McKay's statements that they have a specific vision for the Rings of Power, something that isn't going to be influenced by audience criticisms. Instead, it appears the duo will be improving season 2 by looking at the source material, having teased a more canon-focused Rings of Power season 2 that's more in line with Tolkien's Second Age writings. Bullshit. They're not. That's not going to happen. But with original characters like the corrupted elf Adar to use in their story, Payne and McKay will still have plenty of surprises in store for excited viewers. While Rings of Power Season 2 won't be addressing every fan complaint, Payne and McKay's vision for the show's story seems like it will continue evolving from their own experiences behind the scenes. So there you go. They basically it's just a reiteration of the previous article where they came out and said, nah, we kind of wrote it already. It's sort of like, locked in. We're just sort of refining things. But clearly the article from Screen Rant, and I'm just trying to see who was the author. Nick Bythrow? Nick Bythrow? Nick Bythrow. Clearly, again, there's certain things you look for. When reading an article like this, the fact that the premise is that any criticism of the fact that you know black elves don't conform to Tolkien lore, or black dwarves or black hobbits, excuse me, I got something in my eye. The fact that somebody points this out doesn't mean they're inherently racist. Like I said, I would have loved to have seen the Blue Wizards leading the rebellion against Sauron, or lead, building these, rebel forces against Sauron in Rune, or in the South, in Haradrim. I would have loved to have seen that, and like I said, it would have given you the freedom to have a mostly non-white cast, and I would have been okay with that. Unlike a lot of people, I don't know what it is this day and age, but unlike a lot of people, I don't need the characters that I'm watching on screen to be the same skin color as me for me to be able to identify with them. I just need good characters. Give me a good character and I will identify with them from beginning to end. Okay. So I don't understand that concept of, oh, they have to look exactly like me in order for me to identify with them. That's a weird concept for me. But anyway, so yeah, you could tell, fans who criticize that were racist. You can clearly tell that the author of the article is just like, well, the fan, we shouldn't do fan service and stuff like that, which to me, I don't understand when that became a bad thing. Giving the fans what they want. After all, aren't we the paying customers, right? I give you the money to entertain me, and then you give me entertainment that I like. And if you're turning around and telling me, well, what you like is not what I want to do, so therefore I'm not giving it to you, then why would I give you my money? I don't know. Just a thought, just some things, but I just thought it was an interesting fluff piece. I'm going to do another video in a little while. Another article. It sort of ties into this. It sort of plays up the how there's the sort of post mortem, um, we need to make sure that it's established that every criticism was racist or misogynist or some sort of istophobia, criticism that, none of it came from a good place of people who just love this stuff and just want to see it done right. But anyway, I'll get to that one in the next video. Let me know what you guys think. I don't know. What are you hoping for season 2? Do you think they'll be able to get it back on track? I don't know. I have my doubts. I don't see it happening, but you never know. I could be wrong. All right. So until then, if you like the video, hit the like button. Don't forget to share it. Hit the bell for notifications. But above all, please subscribe. We are rocking and rolling. I'm loving like seeing this stuff. Like you guys, especially today, you guys, or yesterday, because when you see this, it'll be yesterday. You guys had some awesome comments, man. You like. So, you guys were like dropping some knowledge in that comment section for the one video about the Order of the Rings and stuff like that. Good stuff, good stuff. Love seeing it. Anyway, remember to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.